Just wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm seeing. This season had to end. A lot of great things, a lot of bad things. Let's talk a little bit about, our fan base as a whole. I am officially convinced that the Dallas Cowboys have the stupidest fan base I've ever seen. And I hate to say it, but I think the Dallas Cowboys have the stupidest fans I've ever seen in my entire life. Ever. I've never seen so stupid of fans my whole life. Let me tell you why the Dallas Cowboy fans are idiots. And I'm not going to call anybody out. I'm not going to put any names out there. But if you get on social media right now, look at your timeline on Facebook, you will see Cowboys fans congratulating the Cowboys. You will see them, congratulations, great season. Great season. You're stupid. You're stupid. Mediocre expectations give mediocre results. You're an idiot. We've been losing since the 90s. Good season, my ass. You're stupid. Congratulations. Great season. You're stupid. Dallas Cowboys have the stupidest fans in the world. Congratulations. You got knocked the hell out. Congratulations. You idiots. What are you so proud of? You losers. What the hell are you so proud of? I'm tired of this shit. Congratulations. Good season. Really? It's been a good season since the damn 90s. It's been a good season since the 90s. You bunch of losers. If you posted on your timeline, oh, Dak Prescott is good. The Cowboys get you next year. Great season. Blah, blah, blah. You're a loser. Have a good night. Kiss my ass.
Welcome back to another episode of GNT. We have a really special episode, and today I've got someone named Ben. Ben and I have known each other for a little over a decade now through the Rangers, the Texas Rangers baseball team, of course. We also have something in common that I think we kind of wanted to talk about a little bit and just sort of get into what sort of brings us together on the weekends, and that is Dallas Cowboys football. And with that, I'm going to let you just start running with it, Ben. Welcome to the podcast this week.
Thank you for having me. I do appreciate that quite a bit. And yeah. So I guess that where I wanted to go with this essentially is I thought that my biggest passion in outside of work and family life, maybe going into family, is unfortunately the Dallas football Cowboys. And as you had kind of mentioned before, you and I met on a Rangers blog during the mid tens. And really what got me thinking to this is I have been a huge Rangers fan, big baseball fan, really a big sports fan all my life. And that kind of love has been compartmentalized in which I can be a sane, regular person in everyday life and still be a fan of it. Going to the Rangers blog and where you and I met was more just a way to kind of pass the time and a general interest in them, and not having enough blurbs to read while I was pretending to do my actual job around, general sports, music, things that interested me that would distract me from it. So getting into a chat room that just happened to deal with baseball was fun, but when it comes to just a passionate, unabridged, borderline religion, and I'll say I'm maybe more defensive about the Cowboys than I am about my own religious views. I wanted to kind of explore that and talk to you about it, because I think that you and I have like a similar kind of experience of the excitement, the anticipation, potentially the overconsumption of alcohol while we watch these games, and then just the in almost any kind of capacity, the heartbreak that goes with the Cowboys. And so I wanted to kind of explore why we are the way that we are in this with this particular group, and maybe kind of go down some things of, is it really worth it for us? And maybe go down memory road or memory lane in terms of what we, have gotten out of this. Has this been beneficial to us? And maybe if we could do it all over again or potentially reset, where we would want to reset from, whether it be our rooting interest in a football team, rooting interest in other sports teams, or just rooting interests in general of, hey, if I were 5 and wanting to do something all over again, would I choose the kind of the route that I did? So not to get too deep or existential or this is your life and regrets, kind of keeping it light, but I kind of wanted to get with you. And so I guess, Zane, I'll pass it back over to you. What was your first memory of them, or do I peg your fandom in a different, maybe non-light than I did my own in terms of my emotional state when it comes to this football team?
So, first of all, never peg me ever, if you don't mind. Second of all, have you breathed in the last 3 minutes? Jesus.
No, I don't. I don't do that.
And third, if you can't tell, Ben is a salesman. He, I think, goes on the philosophy of he has the outline in his head where he does the here's what I'm going to tell you about, then he tells you about it, and then he finishes with here's what we talked about. I think that sounds like what you do. You enjoyed. I mean, that's exactly right. I think I nailed it there.
Yeah, correct.
And fourthly, and I think lastly, we don't actually do that on this podcast, Ben. We just talk about whatever the fuck whenever we want to talk about it. So thanks for the outline, though. I'll try and stick to it as best I can.
If we go off, then and talk about other subjects like bourbon or loose women, then I think we'll be okay as well.
A guy jumps on a podcast that I started and is telling me what the fuck to do. I love it. No. Ben and I, we're good friends, so everything we're talking about is definitely in good fun. So I think you asked me about my first real memory of the Cowboys.
Yeah, and if your kind of relationship to them, as I kind of described it, is similar to mine, or if there's anything wrinkles that you'd like to add, but we can definitely start with your.
Yeah, and I've mentioned it before, so I think, and I really dislike the fact that I've gotten my kids into the Cowboys just because of how sad it's been for 25 plus years. But my dad is definitely what got me into the Cowboys. I think when growing up in Dallas, that was just, on Sundays you watched football. Cowboys run every Sunday. That's who my dad grew up cheering for his whole life. And so that's kind of what got me into it. My first real memory of being, or of the Cowboys specifically, is really just the triplets. Right, so having Aikman, Irvin, and Emmitt Smith. I mean, that was, I think when we won the last Super Bowl, I was 8. That sounds about right. I think I was 8 years old, and so I didn't really. And I think you and I are about the same age, so you were probably 7 or 8 as well. So I don't really have much memory of that, even though I'm sure I watched the entire game and probably the entire season. But I don't have a real clear memory of it. I just remember the triplets, guys like Jay Novacek and Alvin Harper. Obviously, you had Moose, Daryl Johnston. So that's I don't remember actual moments from games back then, but I do remember the players especially, and that's sort of. So I guess my dad is what got me into it, and my first memory is really just of those guys, if that makes sense.
It does. And was maybe the first game that you were cognizant of, was it that Super Bowl 30 against the Steelers, or was it before that, or was it all just kind of a blur of this is what we do and I don't really remember anything, or was there one defining game that you specifically remember as, oh yeah, this is mine now?
No, I'm pretty sure it's just a blur. Everything kind of just runs together. I remember beating the Bills a couple of times, Steelers, of course. And then I remember certain moments in games, like when Emmett, broke the all-time rushing record, things like that. But just because of how much football I think you and I have consumed over the last 30 plus years, it's hard unless there's a specific thing that happens, and typically it's heartbreak for us as Cowboys fans.
Yes.
I don't remember the good times very much, but I remember the bad times all the time. And I know we're going to get into that later, but what about you though? Do you have a first real core memory of you're watching the Cowboys now and this is your team?
A little bit, yeah. So we were much in kind of the same bucket, and my dad was a big Cowboys fan. My mom, weirdly enough, became a really big sports fan as the years went on. I think that growing up in Abilene, there's only a limited amount of things to do, especially if you've got the basic cable package, which I think she still does, of 50 channels.
Hey, I do too, so you can fuck right off.
Fair. A caveat to that is that I don't think that she has Wi-Fi, nor does she know how to really use her smartphone. So I think she's still kind of hovering in about 2004 at this point in time. And so even now, as a 70-plus-year-old woman, she is obsessed with the Kansas City Chiefs now. But we were big into that just as a kid growing up, my dad especially. So that's kind of where I get it. I think that as a memory, and this is kind of, I don't know if it's apropos or not, but as a memory, my first game that I really, really, really kind of formed in my head of this is kind of mine was actually the NFC Championship game against the 49ers that we lost. It was when we were trying to three-peat, going to Candlestick, losing. It was, I think they were wearing the white jerseys with the blue shoulder pads. There was a lot of mud in that game. And then I think the 49ers would go on to beat the Chargers in kind of a blowout where I think the Chargers backdoor covered. Anyways, that's kind of my first real just tangible memory of it. I was around. We went to a family member's house for their first couple of Super Bowls in the 90s. Was vaguely aware of that, but not kind of to the obsessive level that, a kid would get when you get really into it and then, it becomes whatever. But then was fully ingrained for that final Super Bowl year and then beyond. After the Super Bowl win, it kind of became a obsession, so much to the point that the next season, my family was making fun of me. We were at a family reunion. A bunch of people were over at our house. I think that 96 season kicked off with the Cowboys and Bears playing on a Monday night, and the Cowboys offense just couldn't get started. We ended up losing. I was, I want to say, beginning fourth grade and very upset, to the point of tears. And I had a bunch of my cousins who were teenagers all making fun of me because they were Raiders fans. So, yeah, it's been one where, you kind of formulate in your head out of not tragedy, but a loss in a high-profile spot. You get the payoff from the next year. And then from there, it's been what I would consider to be somewhat of a losing effort over the next 28 years and change. So, yeah, that's kind of been my journey altogether.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's sort of, as sports fans, and you and I are again, similar, it's Cowboys, Rangers, Mavericks, Stars, throw in a college team here or there. I mean, I think for you, one of the best moments of your life from a college perspective is when ACU knocked off UT a few years ago at March Madness, which is just was an incredible day for everyone who roots against UT. But no, I mean, most seasons, and this is true for everyone who roots for sports, and I think everyone who listens to this is definitely has to be somewhat of a sports fan. And I mean, it ends in heartbreak every year. And maybe not heartbreak, because sometimes your team just isn't going to be good. I mean, the Rangers this year, I think we knew a month or two in, it wasn't going to be the year for us. So it's not really heartbreak. But with the Cowboys, it seems like we just have more heartbreak than a lot of teams do. And I sort of wanted to segue into that. So, you know, we've got like our first moments, favorite moments, you know, it's probably got to be a Super Bowl or something. When you talk about the heartbreak and the way the seasons end for most every sports fan, regardless of who you root for, unless you're a Chiefs fan now, apparently. What's your least favorite moment? I've got two that I'm thinking of. But like just the moment where you knew that you could just your heart broke. I've got two in my head. Give me yours.
Yeah. So for me, I think that what finally broke, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about kind of when you were okay not being obsessed, or when kind of the chase ended and you just enjoyed it for what it is. Which is still, we're trying to kind of find that in the Cowboys, but when a lot of me broke was Dak and Zeke's rookie year and the end of that. So just as a recap, the team goes 13-3 after Tony Romo goes out in the preseason. Dak is a fourth round rookie quarterback who is kind of looked at as maybe a project, maybe a backup, was slated to be the third quarterback until Kellen Moore, which
Behind
as
Kellen
of
Moore,
recording, yeah. As of this recording, October 4th, 2024 is the Eagles offensive coordinator. Dak is there. We have Ezekiel Elliott, who is now a first round pick and just an absolute rookie sensation. We end up with the first overall seed in the NFC. Green Bay comes in with our current coach, Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers, our NFL's resident head case, and one day RFK's future running mate. They end up taking a huge lead against us. And at that point, it's a little bit of a bummer, and you just say, okay, it is what it is. Things were just too good to be true. The Cowboys come back. I think it's 31-31, in which they tie it with under a minute to go, and all things look to going to overtime, with the Cowboys overcoming about a 17-point deficit, having all the momentum until Aaron Rodgers uncorked it on a last second play. I think that it was like 3rd and 20 as well, so something crazy in terms of the actual yardage to go. Throws a Hail Mary that gets caught into field goal range, and they are able to kick a field goal to end the game in regulation. Again, I think it was 34-31. I may be off on that one, but that just broke me.
Well, no one's going to fact check you here. I can guarantee you that.
It's just for myself. It's not like I'm going to go back and listen, but that's where I think that it ended up landing, somewhere in there. So that was, I think, the moment that absolutely broke me and kind of made me numb to a number of things. What about yourself?
So I think for me, it's, and my memory, like, again, you know, I drink too much and I watch or I consume too much football. I want to say that my wife's parents were in town during the playoffs for the Dez catch, non-catch fiasco. Mm-hmm. And I remember I needed to go to like Home Depot or Lowe's or something after the game was over, because it was an afternoon game. And I needed my father-in-law to help me fix something in the house. So we finished the game, and I was so frustrated that I just punched my wall in front of my wife's parents. And they were like, "Do you have a problem?" And I'm like, "I have a lot of problems. But my biggest problem is that A, that was a catch, and B, the Cowboys are never going to win anything ever again as long as I'm alive." Let's go to Lowe's. So I think my father-in-law and I drove to a gas station, got 2 tall boys before we went to Lowe's, and just drank the beers like in silence in the car. He's a Cowboys fan also, so we just sort of drank them. just sat there and just I couldn't even. He doesn't get as upset as I do, but I just couldn't believe it, and it just pissed me off. And then my second, and this is probably like even more impactful to me. It's not as crazy as the Dez catch non-catch, but we were in Vegas in January of this year.
Mm-hmm.
A few of our friends were out there playing the Packers again, wild card weekend, and there's 4 of us, and we're sitting in the Circa Sportsbook. And we just happened to be sitting next to Packers fans because, it's basically we just Cowboys and Packers fans at the time. The game starts off, 21-0 in the first quarter.
Yep.
And it was like we had flown all this way. We'd spent all this money. We're betting on all of these things. And we're going to go out like this. And then my flight gets canceled. I have to drive all the way from Vegas back to Colorado. It was a whole fucking deal. But so that kind of resonates in my head a lot, as A, being more recent, and B, just the calamity of fuck ups that happened afterwards as well. But that's it. I'll never forget being there. And playoffs are just not good for the Cowboys.
Well, I think that playing the Packers in this century has just not really been good for the Cowboys, or at least within the last decade. So I'm with you there, and yeah, absolutely. I think that this loss that we had against Green Bay was maybe a little bit more palatable, only because I borderline expected it, just based off of how we had played other good teams through the year. And just absolutely getting waylaid on it and thinking, okay, the Packers probably have a pretty decent game plan against us. And after their first drive where they just rammed it down our throats, I kind of prepared myself for the worst, which ended up happening, and I was fine. To your memory about that 2014, so I guess this was January 2015 game against the Packers, the Dez caught it game, essentially. That was hard. I think that where my frustration in the game itself was the Cowboys were really close to putting that game away in the second half. And I don't know if you remember this, but DeMarco Murray got a hole up the right side in which it looked like he was going to break it. I think that would have brought the game into double digits and it was going to be over. But he air fumbled it, just absolutely fumbled it. Packers get it, they come back, and that becomes kind of, because of the Dez catch, that particular play becomes a little bit less relevant just because of where the game was. But that one still is a frustrating point to me. But then I also remember that was in the brief stint. So for those that don't know, I work in IT security. About 10 years ago, as I was kind of fledgling my career, decided that I was going to actually go work for the Texas Rangers in a role that I didn't quite understand was going to be pretty grueling in terms of just smiling and dialing. But I was actually in my stint at the Rangers during this time. And I remember that next day coming back to the office, and most of the people that worked there weren't from the DFW area. They were sports professionals who had come from all over, and little did I know that these were fairly thought after, and we just had a lot of people celebrating the Cowboys loss because we were 2 weeks away from doing fan fest, and so it was like, oh, we're gonna get all the attention off of us, or off of them, and back onto the Rangers, who had an absolutely shitty year in 2014. I just remember feeling so angry about that, of just, really? We're going to do that? And that's going to be it? But that's, that's definitely the memory that I take kind of from that one as well.
I will say that you mentioned they're sports professionals or whatever, and so they don't really have a fan base. I will say the older I get, the more I could give a fuck who you want to root for. You're from the Abilene area. I'm from the DFW area. I think, the 4 big sports teams in Dallas, those are just our teams. And a lot of people, maybe aren't from places that have all 4 teams. Some people are just bad people and root for like the Lakers, Yankees, Chiefs now. But I'm in the Denver area, and so the older I get, the less I care about who you want to root for, unless you have a stupid reason. Like you said, your mom is like a Chiefs fan now. My kids are 7. They own Chiefs jerseys, which they know they're Cowboys fans. And I mentioned this on previous episodes. They know they're Cowboys fans. But if they want to wear a Mahomes or a Kelsey jersey, what the fuck do I care? Doesn't matter to me. Do whatever you want to do. I don't mind rooting for the Chiefs. We've got friends who live here also that are Chiefs fans. I've got friends here that are Nebraska Cornhusker fans. If they're on TV and they're not playing a team that I'm rooting for, yeah, I'll root for those people too. It doesn't matter to me. But at the same time, you got to have your core teams that it's ride or die and it'll never waver. But growing up, for whatever reason, I've always just had sort of an infatuation with Denver and just sort of everything about Denver. I've always liked it. And so, the Broncos were in the AFC, Cowboys obviously in the NFC. John Elway, I loved John Elway back in the 90s. And so I used to root for them also. And then, of course, the year I move to Colorado, they get Russell Wilson. And I said, well, I'm not a Broncos fan anymore because I don't like Russell Wilson. But it kind of goes into the next thing I wanted to get into is, do you have other teams you root for that aren't in the DFW area? And if so, can you get into that a little bit as to why you root for who you do potentially?
Yeah. So for me, I have a weird infatuation with the city of Cincinnati. And that infatuation comes from a couple things. One, do you remember, some of the old NFL posters? They may show like the helmets of all the teams, and maybe like the helmets of all like the Super Bowl matchups.
I'm looking at one. I've got a poster in my office that has all the helmets on it. So yes, I'm familiar.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm not speaking of something that's only conceptually obvious to myself. I was obsessed with the Bengals helmet. Not because I thought it looked cool, but just because it was way different than anything else that I
Is that the
had,
orange and white
seen.
striped one?
Orange and black striped one.
Oh, black. Yeah.
Yeah. So that to me was really interesting because for me, all of the other ones, again, this is a concept of like a 6 or 7 year old looking at this. All the other helmets are fairly symmetrical, whereas that one kind of looked all over the place. And so it was very curious to me. And then just the name Cincinnati to me kind of was funny. I mean, I have no idea where it came from, but that also goes back to as a kid and even as an adult being like obsessed with maps, and
I still
almost
can't even spell Cincinnati. I don't know if there's 2 N's or 2 T's or if there are 2 N's and 2 T's. I have no idea.
There's some silent C's around there. I mean, we're just going all over the place. It ends in an I. I mean, I guess Miami does too, but still, it's all over the place. And
Dallas, Dallas, easy.
Easy. It's salad backwards, almost.
Almost.
So, but you kind of another thing about sports and maybe how that shapes kind of your mind is being able to understand geography of where do these teams reside, and then what goes on in these cities. Like, how is this different from Dallas? What makes up this fan base? What makes up that? And to me, Cincinnati just never made any sense. I didn't know where it was. I couldn't tell you what kind of population was there. Didn't know for a long time what state it occupied or what part in the state it occupied. It was just kind of this very, very random spot that happened to have a team with a very unsymmetrical helmet. And I was kind of drawn to that just because of all like the unknown quantities that were there. And then obviously you have like the Reds, who are the baseball team. This is before I even knew Pete Rose, but again, it just kind of becomes
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Dead as of this recording. Breaking news. And
Breaking
that
news.
is
Sound the alarm.
So that's where I was kind of my fandom oddly enough became, and so I have this soft spot in my heart for Cincinnati teams, but I don't know why outside of the obscurity of it all. Does that make sense, or is that?
No, it does, and that's why I said so. Like, growing up, if my teams weren't, immediately, or I guess close enough to the other team, so like I was never a 49ers fan because Cowboys and 49ers had, that sort of hatred for 20 years. I could never root for anybody in the NFC East. Once Emmitt Smith went to the Cardinals, they were out of my life forever. So yeah, I mean, I growing up, like I just had like Denver for whatever reason and just liked it. And now being here, I root for I don't root for them, but I'll watch. We go to a handful of Rockies games every year. Stadium's fantastic. We actually got to watch the Rangers this year when they came into town. So we watch those. I still am not a huge Broncos fan anymore, and I guess I just have kind of gotten away from some teams that I used to like. There's certainly, and it's hard to explain, when two teams come on the TV, I can immediately tell you which team I'm rooting for. And I think it's usually I just hate one team more than the other team. Like, for whatever reason, there's probably some deep-rooted stuff here from my childhood. Like, teams from Florida. My dad raised me to hate, like, every team from Florida. So Miami, Florida State.
Let's dig into that a little bit. I'm curious. What specifically about Florida were you told to hate?
Should I lay down on a couch before we start this conversation and get into it? No, I really honestly don't know. But it's just one of those things that you grow up and you hear over and over and over again. And it's like, okay, yeah, I don't like those teams. But now, like, I don't have a problem with any of them. I love that Florida State is getting its ass kicked every week. I think that's really fun to see. But I don't really have much hatred for them. But do you know what I'm talking about when, like, a game comes on and you just immediately know who to root for? Like, it's just like almost like instinctual.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if that is, just based off of 37 or 38 years of watching history and watching a game and saying, again, I'll throw on a random game, Raiders versus Chargers, right? That, if it's the color pattern or if it's like the sympathy potentially for the Chargers and how they've been perpetually a, next year's team, and you always kind of feel for them versus the Raiders and what's his name's haircut and just how despicable those can always be. So, I mean, I definitely get what you're saying. I mean, for you, is it that, hey, you have an even number of like bucketed teams, like 16 or so that you just really don't like, and 10 to 16 that you were like, oh, you know what? I like these teams regardless, unless they're playing, someone else that's higher up in the hierarchy of these, specifically the Cowboys, but somebody else.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those underdog things where, I mean, I watch March Madness every year, and I didn't go to a big college, so I don't really have a college team. I like Notre Dame football. Their basketball team has never been that great. Their women's team is a lot better than their men's team historically. So I don't really have a rooting interest when it comes to March Madness. So you can, pretty much guarantee that any game, whoever the lowest seed is, unless I just don't like that team, again, maybe they beat Notre Dame in football or something, whoever the lowest seed is, and when I say lowest, I know that's kind of confusing. It's like when you go to the AC thermostat in your house, do you lower it or do you raise it to make it cooler in your house? So when I say lower seed, I mean the higher, 16 versus 1. So I'm always rooting for the lowest ranked team. Yeah, it's hard to say that Like when you think about it, it's impossible to say it without somebody getting confused as to what you're talking about.
I think I track with you. I'm not considering a 1 seed as the lowest ranking seed.
If it's a 14 versus a 3, and I don't care about the 3 seed, give me the 14 seed all day.
So I guess this kind of smuggles its way back into one of the things that I was kind of interested to talk about. So a game on its face that you have no real rooting interest in.
Sure.
You just decide, hey, I'm going to pick a team. I mean, do you do that fairly often? Do you find enjoyment out of that? And let's set aside things like, gambling or putting props on it or something. Just at its face, hey, I'm watching sports for the sake of having something to do. Is that something that you enjoy doing? Do you feel like it's worth doing versus something else? I'm just curious to kind of hear your thoughts on that.
So that's a pretty good, I think, litmus test to what I actually enjoy. Again, when the DFW sports teams are playing, I watch them if I can. And being here, I have to figure out ways, and I don't do anything. I don't stream illegally or anything. So if I can watch it here, I watch it here. I'm a very big proponent of not like pirating stuff. It's just kind of something
I think that you and I are the only two people that share that out of anyone that's listening. I'm probably going to wager that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Because I can't do it. I mean, well, one, I can't do it because of technology. But two, I just can't do it because I don't want to. But hey, I got my new Apple TV plugged in and installed yesterday, baby. I was watching the Prime game on Thursday night on my new Apple TV, so I'm getting there.
Welcome to 2014, man. Welcome.
I appreciate it. It's nice. It's good. My old one just sort of sucked, so I had to get a new one. And Clax thankfully helped me out with which one to buy, so that was good. And then my wife bought it because I don't buy things online because I don't know how. That's a different conversation, but
much different. Yes, but
so I think the litmus test, I guess, for me is, like I said, DFW sports. When they're on, I'll watch them. I don't like to watch a lot of basketball. I don't like to watch a lot of hockey. I don't like to watch a lot of baseball. But I can guarantee you if there's an NFL game or a college football game on TV, like tomorrow will be Saturday, I'll have the college football games turned on all day long. And I could, like I said, it doesn't matter who's playing. I'll find the best game on during a specific window, and I'm watching football. So I think over the years I've learned that while I enjoy sports, and I mean last year with the World Series and the Rangers, I mean, I'm looking at my office right now and I've got at least like 8 or 10 things in my office about their World Series run. I've got I've got framed newspapers and all sorts of stuff here. I love it. I'm not going to watch, the Astros versus the Tigers or whatever it was. I don't, it doesn't move the needle for me. But last night, I'm watching the NFL game, Falcons and who the fuck was it, Ben?
The Buccaneers.
Yeah, I'm watching Falcons Buccaneers. I have zero rooting interest in Falcons Buccaneers, but it's football, and I only get 18 weeks a year to watch football. Right. I'm watching football. Right. What about you?
And I am, yeah. I am kind of in a phase of life in which, obviously I'm married. It's just my wife and I. And I guess the economy of TV time is disproportionately favored in stuff that we can both enjoy. And sure. For her, sports is typically not on that we both enjoy unless she's doing, something on the iPad or whatever, not wanting to pay it and going into separate rooms.
Which is another topic, by the way, we should get into when you're done. I'm going to put this, I'm going to pin this. Keep going.
Sure. So on its face, I'm a little bit like you. For baseball, I will probably tune out for almost all of the playoffs. Anything that doesn't involve the Rangers, I'm usually not that interested in. Again, unless I'm just like absolutely bored out of my mind by myself without anything to do. But there's just so many things that I can, put my interest on, including just going on a walk outside or something like that, that it's just not really that big of a deal. Again, unless it's the Rangers. For hockey, I'm completely out. Even for like the Stars playoffs,
Sure.
I'm okay to put on for a little bit. But even when they were making their deep run, I love going to hockey games. That's a lot of fun. Watching it on TV, there's just a lot going on, including the announcing, that makes it incredibly viscerally distracting and stressful to me. And I just don't really enjoy watching that for the little amount of chaos that it
Hockey
seems
is one
to
of
give.
the rare sports that is better in person. I used to
It
think
is.
football was better, like the NFL. The product on TV is so good now that you don't have to go to games anymore for the NFL.
I will. I will. In another life, or I guess in another job, I still have the same life. My firm had Cowboys tickets, and really good Cowboys tickets. And typically, what I would do is, instead of, hey, I'm going to go to the game with you, because I don't like to sit and just hang out with a random like client for 3.5 hours, which is why like I don't golf with
Sure.
people. I don't really want to be around someone for 4 hours. It's not that I don't enjoy them, it's just that's not who I am. I would instead say, hey, we have 4 tickets, bring yourself and a guest, and I do that for 2 clients. Basically, meet me outside, I'll give you a parking pass, we can chug some beers, we can talk about whatever it is that we need, and I'll let you guys go, and I'm going to drive back home. And my firm thought that I was the one that was going to games with them. That's how much I don't want to be at an NFL game. Hockey is exactly the opposite, though. But
It's
kinda
exactly the opposite.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, kind of getting back to it, the NBA, I am a little bit more partial to that product. I do think that it can be fun to watch, or at least a little bit easier to just pick up a random game, especially in the playoffs when there's stakes, even if it's like non-Maverick. But again, that's more of just like a flow kind of thing that makes it a little bit easier. Hockey's a little bit faster paced and harder to watch. But then football, I'm with you that, I hear more and more people talk about, oh, the game is just unwatchable. It's horrible to watch. Like, the only thing that cares is the results. To me, that feels like more of a byproduct of wanting to know the ending for a gambling problem than it is like actually, hey, I enjoy this product, even though, yeah, they're just, because of the too high coverage, they're throwing tiny little screen passes or whatever. It's cathartic in a way that I don't think any other sport really gets. And that includes college football as well, because of kind of the breaks in that. So I would say NFL, just from a TV perspective, is my favorite to watch. I would stop down, and typically I consider any of those to be a decent use of time if I have nothing else going on.
Yeah, and I brought this up, I think, with Steve earlier this week, where I think people who enjoy college football more than the NFL. One, they're psychotic and they need to go into a hospital or something and get checked out. But I think it's because there's just so much of it that you forget about all of the bland things that happen or all the blowouts that occur. We don't get a whole lot of blowouts in the NFL each week. Yeah, there's going to be 1 or 2 games where it's 40-10, something like that. And usually it's a bad team versus
Or
a
a
good
team
team.
that can capably run a 12 personnel against the Cowboys right now. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're not wrong. Typically, the NFL is just, it's the best athletes lined up playing against the other best athletes, and they're the same people, across the ball. And so it might be unwatchable at some point. And that's why, and when I say unwatchable, I mean, it's good on good, and they're all just amazing at what they do, clearly, because they've gotten to the NFL. And so I understand where it can be rough, but it's just, I had a scheme on this play on defense against your offensive scheme, and it worked out, and you got a rushing, you got 0 rushing yards on this play. So it just happened to work out that we both called the same exact, opposite play, and it worked. And so that's why I think the red zone for me on Sunday mornings is one of my favorite things. If the Cowboys aren't playing, if the Cowboys are on, I'm watching the Cowboys without the red zone. But when red zone's on, you can at least see a lot more plays and things happen in real time. And so I think that helps a little bit, but I do understand the argument of people who say it's, not that great of content. But I also think that maybe they don't appreciate exactly what's happening in the sport either at the same time.
No, I would agree. And again, not going to just lay on my sword and defend every single game. I mean, there certainly are very poorly managed, run, constructed teams that can be hard to watch. I mean, especially if you're in a backup quarterback type situation. But even then, I think that, there's something kind of going back to childhood memories, going back to the posters with the logos on it. There's something so comforting, I want to say, about looking at, just these two logos that have been enshrined into my brain that are playing in real time. Well, the weather is getting cooler or whatever on a day in which, either I just finished up work or I'm off work. Like, there's just a lot that's going on that makes it very, I guess, cathartic is the right word, even if it is kind of an absolute dog shit day.
So do you know how ingrained sports are into my brain? This is going to sound a little bit weird, but stick with me here, okay? When all the name changes were happening with certain franchises, so we'll start with like the Commanders in football or the Guardians.
The indigenous franchises?
Yes. So for me, growing up, as involved with sports as I was and watching and and I consumed a lot more sports back then. I think maybe, like you said, as we get older, we have other responsibilities and we just don't have time to watch every single sport. I mean, I used to watch the same Sports Center 4 times in a row during the summer. It was an hour recording, and by the fourth one, I could basically recite the entire script from the episode. But I'd watch it because what else was I going to do? But I didn't even really consider the names of teams to be offensive to certain people, because to me, that didn't mean anything other than it was a football team or a baseball team. Like, never gave it two thoughts. Just was like, yeah, that's a football team. And then they were changing it, and I have no problem with them changing it. They definitely should change it, or should have, and they did. But I just never even considered it being offensive because it was just, to me, a sports team.
Yeah, it felt like it was. And again, this is just as you're growing up, some things are just cement, and they are the way they are, and they always have been the way that they always have been. And that's for better or worse. It's just institutions in general. And, for me, just like what you were saying, the Washington, calling them R-skins is actually sounding even worse.
We'll just say
the
Commanders. Yeah.
The Commanders.
I don't think R-skins is going to work. Is that like a condom brand or something? Probably. If not, it should be.
I don't know. It sounds more offensive somehow than the original name for a number of reasons.
Come to our spa with our skin.
Yeah, they do. The swingers.
I'm telling you. Are you tired of your skin? Try our skin.
Our skin, yes. No, but it just felt like, hey, these things, they've always been this way. They'll always be this way. They'll never change. And so I'm with you there in that, there are institutions that just felt like they can't be questioned. Even when they were being questioned, it almost felt like this will wipe over and nothing will, affect the fact that we call the Commanders by their old name, or that we call the Cleveland Guardians by their old name, or even, in your alma mater's name, the old name. And so, it just kind of becomes one of those things. And so, I guess that means that we as people can maybe change, and that institutions in our minds can be shifted, even though they've been kind of put into concrete there, which I guess maybe is a roundabout way to ask, if I can change and you can change and our institutions can change, do you think that your love or your affection for the Cowboys, as we talked about at the beginning of the hour, can change, could change? And is there anything that would make you change that, or for any other allegiance, let's call it maybe as non-consequential as sports would be?
I thought you were going into a Rocky speech there from Rocky 4. If I can change and you can change, we can all change.
And that's how we beat communism.
That's how we beat communism. Rocky 4. No, yes. So I think over the years, like we mentioned, just with more stuff going on and, our jobs get bigger as we get older. It's sort of like the common path. And, I've got a couple of kids. I know you don't, but you've still got, family and things to take care of. You just have less time to do things. And so, every weekend now is just trying to entertain kids. And thankfully they are able to watch sports now. And so that is at least something we can bond over. But you don't want them sitting in front of a television like me for 12 hours a day watching football, even though if, my birthday is coming up and it's October 12th, which that's one of the best Saturdays, at least on the schedule this year for college football. And I'm sure I'll be dragged to all sorts of shit I don't want to do.
Just because you're so loved. That's a terrible thing.
Yeah, I know. I'll be having to do all kinds of stuff. So I think the older I get, I just have, fewer chances to watch sports. And so the only team, and again, I don't really like regular season NBA hockey or even sometimes baseball. But if I know there's a game on, like a random Thursday on MLB Network, and I'm at home doing nothing, and I've finished whatever I need to do at work, I'll turn on MLB Network and watch games or whatever. Yeah, I definitely have kind of moved away from like my Notre Dame fandom. I mean, I still love Notre Dame. They're still my number one team. I've sort of, if they're on TV and it's, say it's a 2:30 kick Central Time, but we're going to go do something else, I have no problem. If the Cowboys are on at noon, I'm not making plans for noon unless my kids are playing football, which I still, if you've listened to the most recent pod, I still can't believe we do Sunday fucking football here in Colorado, because that is it's NFL college. I'm losing my train of thought here. I'm so upset. It's NFL Sunday. Like, it's my one day of the week where I want to sit down and not do a damn thing, and I've got to be out for at least 2 hours, which, again, I love my kids, but sometimes they play during Cowboys games, and it's like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this?
Well, and you can't delay Cowboys games, so you can't just tape it and come back to it. There's just...
Yeah, Steve's a fucking moron who can record a game and watch it later, and he just avoids everything. No. It's impossible. If I know that the game's over, I have to know the score. It's something in my brain where I can't do it. But so I have gone away from Notre Dame, and we're being in Fort Collins. We're big Colorado State fans because it's fun to support a local school. It's kind of like if you were to support like SMU or something, where it's we go to a handful of games, whether it's men's or women's basketball. We've been to 2 football games this year already here. It's fun to go to and support the local teams. But as far as the Cowboys go, I don't think anything's ever going to make me not be a diehard Cowboys fan. What about you?
It's interesting. So, I would say you're right in terms of, my fandom. has been the DFW teams from its core.
Yeah.
You know, Stars, Mavericks, Rangers, Cowboys. I think that the unique thing about that, and let's take away the third grade Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl, just because I hadn't been through those times, is that the Stars, Mavs, and Rangers have all won a respective championship during my more formative years. Take out the Stars just because they weren't they're definitely the
That
fourth
might be my
on
first
that list.
actual core sports memory though, where I was locked into it. Was it 99 in the Stars?
And very much so. That whole playoff run. I mean, I very much remember the Avalanche series and
I
what
still
that
hate the
looked
Avalanche
like.
to this day.
Yes, it's a tough one, but again, it's not like I had like a lot of emotions with the Stars. So
Right.
with going to the Mavericks and the Rangers, like I remember for the Mavericks, going to the finals and the Dwayne Wade series, the ghost fouls, the heartbreak. I was in New Zealand when that happened, so I only got to watch game one of that entire series. All the rest of them were happening while I was, different points in time of the day, and I didn't have access to ESPN or whatever was showing. So I was getting it from a 2006, bad internet connection ESPN website, and but the heartbreak was there, and then the '07 heartbreak was there, which kind of made 2011 feel as sweet as
thank
it
God
did.
for 2011.
Yes. But, after 2011, I kind of, it's not like I stopped caring, but I was okay no matter what happened. Even, going into the Luka years where it's either been, there's been some good success, but no matter what, it's not a life and death kind of thing for me. And part of that's growing up, kind of as we talked about, but part of it is the closure of, hey, I saw it in my life as an adult and I'm okay with it. The Rangers, felt good because, you and I have had the 2011 thing that happened. 2010 was a happy to be there. So I don't really feel
2011 was
that strong.
Yes. What's the
That
character's
was
name in The
heartbreaking.
Simpsons who gets his heart broken by Lisa?
Oh, Ralph Wiggum.
When his heart breaks. I think in 2011
Yes, you can
we can
literally
see
take-
all of our hearts just break at the exact same time.
The day before my wedding.
Oh,
Yes.
that's right.
I very much remember that. So, I had that and then had 2012, the leading the division for 161 games until that last one, which for 2013, the play-in game, 2014, the injuries, and then, 15, you have the Batista home run in the game 5, and then the sweep, and then kind of the years in the wilderness until we won the World Series. But like that kind of felt closure. So even this year, it's like, I don't care. Like, yeah, the Rangers didn't have a great season. I don't care. And in fact, they could win the World Series again. It's not going to be as good as 2023, and I have closure with it. So I guess where that's going, and maybe to close it out, since we've gone about an hour at this point, is my two other sports loves have had a championship that I can say, hey, that's the flag in the ground. I'm okay. I can, quote unquote, die a happy man in terms of sports. I don't feel that way about the Cowboys. And if they were to make a run to win the Super Bowl, I think that that's where it would be where I could say, okay, I'm finally finished with it. Not finished. I'm finally at peace with whatever happens, or I can walk away from the fandom depending on what Jerry Jones does in his personal life, or the fact that, he's supported, Donald Trump and given $5 million to him, or the fact that his, fuck-offs of sons are running the team in the most abjectly poorly way possible, which, I won't get into too much.
We talk about
still,
that enough on a daily basis, I think.
I think that yes. So, but yeah, I'd say let's win a Super Bowl. We'll see maybe if that's what it takes for me to start to schedule things, or not around Cowboys games anymore. But maybe that's the genius of Jerry, is that we've been itching for 28 years and continue to, and have had a whole conversation around them and what this really means.
An entire master plan he's got to just keep us reeled in. But no, I think to your point, yes, like we're very lucky as fans to have at least experienced, I guess, championships in all four of the big sports. We were a little bit too young for the Cowboys, but I mean, like I said, 99, that's probably the first playoff series I remember, or at least experience with the Stars. We had 2011 with the Mavericks. I honestly wrote off the Rangers after 2011. Like you said, 2010 was happy to be there. 2011, just a lot of fan bases I don't think are ever going to experience that level of heartbreak. We were one strike away twice from winning the World Series. I didn't even watch Game 7. I was driving to my future in-laws' houses out in West Texas during Game 7 because I knew it was over. As soon as Game 6 ended, I said, I don't need to watch Game 7. We're not going to win. And so I kind of, had written them off. But I will say, I guess that I didn't expect to be affected as much as I was last year during the World Series run, because I've got videos, and I've sent videos to you and our friends and pictures that my wife was taking without me even knowing, where I'm in my living room watching the Rangers World Series, and I've got tears in my eyes, where it's just like, oh, I guess I still do care about this team quite a bit. I didn't realize how much I did. And I think it's a little bit different because of the heartbreak we had. So, if the Cowboys were to go on a run this year and win the Super Bowl, I'm probably not going to have any tears. I'll be extremely happy, and I've got my Cowboy flag flying, and I'll, do all the things. But I probably won't shed a single tear. But I was couldn't even speak during Game 5. It was just done. It was awesome. But yeah, I don't think anything's going to change sort of my viewing or my fandom. But go Cowboys. Texas forever.
Texas forever, unless they're playing ACU. In which case, we're all in for ACU.
Absolutely.
So, awesome. Well, hey, man, it's been great talking with you. Just holler at me anytime you want to have me back on. Otherwise, we'll take it to next time.
No, it's been great. I appreciate you jumping on, and we'll do this again hopefully sometime soon. Take care, man.
All right. See you, buddy. Bye.
Peace.